Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 24th and tonight's movie is The Ritual. This is the second movie of this month directed by David Bruckner. The first was The Night House, which was all the way back at the beginning and was one of the better movies I've seen this month. The first time I heard about this movie was in like an Ask Reddit question of what's the scariest movie you've ever seen, and this movie came up. From what I can tell from the trailer, this is about these four adult man friends who, I guess, lost a friend and they're doing something like going to his grave, but his grave is like in the middle of the wild. They all sound British, but there was a line about how hiking trails in the UK have pubs, so I guess they're not in the UK. And they go through a forest. They want to cut through a forest because one of them has like a sprained ankle, and they're attacked by a monster of some sort. One thing that's kind of alarming from the trailer is that there is quite a bit of arguing amongst the friends, and I really hope that doesn't mean this movie is just going to be full of pointless bickering. And by pointless, I mean it's literally just to drive the plot forward, like, screw you, I don't believe in any of this, I'm going back on my own, walks off, dies. On the subjects of supernatural monsters I've watched this month, this movie has some pretty stiff competition with The Monster. But maybe this monster will be a match for Slimy Venom Godzilla. I'm gonna go check it out. Okay, the monster in this movie 100% could eat that other one for breakfast. However, the movie itself is not quite as good. I'm giving The Ritual an 8 out of 10. The horror is great. The horror might be the best I've seen this whole month. There are other things that are the problem. Unfortunately, my vibe from the trailer was not off, and there was a lot of arguing in this movie. The four men are named Luke, Hutch, Phil, and Dom. They're all like in their 30s. At least two of them have like a wife and kids. And the whole reason why they're doing this hike in the first place, which is in Sweden, is because their fifth friend wanted to do it, and he died the night he suggested it by being killed in like a liquor store robbery. Out of the four remaining, I wasn't really crazy about any of these characters. Phil and Hutch were okay, but there is way too much time in this movie spent with Luke and Dom butting heads. Dom is this type of character that is sadly not uncommon in horror movies, and I'm sure there's like an official trope name, but I'm just going to refer to them as the problem characters. Those characters that seem to serve no purpose but to complain, make everyone else miserable, and drag everybody else down. Dom is a great example of a problem character for most of this movie. But that doesn't mean everybody else gets off the hook, because the reason why they cut through the woods is because Dom, like, stepped wrong and, like, hurt his knee. The other people think he's just, like, over-exaggerating, but they say that cutting through the woods will make the hike take only 1 day instead of 2 days. And let me tell you, there are a few horror movies that would not have a plot if they didn't decide to cut through the woods on this hike to save time. And while none of them seem particularly outdoorsy, just by logic, going through the woods, especially when it's going to get dark, will be darker, more dangerous, easier to get lost in, and there's a bunch of other things in the woods too. And I kind of thought that there was like something supernatural in these woods that make people get lost in them. Like it was like that in the Blair Witch Project. They were going in circles even though they felt like they were walking in a straight line. But I don't even think that's the case in this movie. They're just that bad at it that they're able to get as lost as they did. So the catalyst for this story is a poorly written character causing the other characters to make a very poor, illogical decision. But once they get into the woods, things pick up a lot. This is a lot like The Monster, where they're very careful to keep their cards close to their chest for a majority of the movie. For a majority of The Ritual, you don't see the monster. You don't even see, like, its silhouette or, like, body parts of it. They keep it completely out of sight. You can just tell that whatever it is huge. And is able to, like, disembowel big game, including humans, and, like, hang them up in the trees. There's also something in these woods that really gets inside the characters' heads. Or at least I assume so. You only really see what it's doing to Luke, the main character. But with him, it keeps showing him visions of like that corner store because he was with the friend who died. And he regrets not doing more to try to help. And Dom just straight up blames Luke for it. So I assume that these woods have the ability to show you the things that you regret the most or you're the most afraid of. The best thing about The Ritual is everything they did with this monster in the woods. The build-up is incredible, and the payoff is 100% worth it. This is one of the best monsters I've ever seen in a movie. It makes it definitely worth it to make it through the, I admit, not very good first act in this movie. However, that doesn't still mean that the first act doesn't drag down the rest of the movie a little bit. This was adapted from a novel, one that I've never read. So maybe that was why the characters were the way they were. They wanted it to be a very faithful adaptation. And if that's the case, there wasn't really much they could have done, but that doesn't make it any better. Still, the ending in this movie 100% makes it worth it. And now I want to go into those spoilers. For a majority of the movie, I kind of thought it was just this one monster in the woods, but no, it's a cult surrounding this monster in the woods. And what do monster cults always do in horror movies? They sacrifice outsiders. First Hutch and then Phil get, snatched away, and they find their bodies up in the trees, just like they found, an elk towards the beginning of Getting in the Forest. But Dom and Luke are, captured and brought alive into this cabin in sort of a clearing towards the edge of the woods. That's the crazy thing, too. They were a 2-hour hike tops for making it out. We get some vague lore from one of the cultists about this being a child of Loki or something, but it's what the monsters do in all monster cult movies, where they are offering protection and something to this cult, and they respond by giving the monster sacrifices. However, while the other three, their fates were all sealed the moment they went in that forest, they are giving Luke the choice to either join them or get killed by this monster. Because apparently he has enough emotional pain and baggage to, be one of them. Anyway, I don't really care about any of that. I want to talk about this monster, which we finally get a look at. The name it's apparently given in the movie is a Norse word that means mother. I think it's pronounced like Mother, but it's spelled with a D. She's apparently an illegitimate child of Loki, and yes, this monster is confirmed by the author of the novel to be female. This was not a way I was expecting to get female representation in horror movie villains, but you know what? I'll take it. I didn't think that the monster from The Monster had a very, interesting design. It was very generic. This one is unlike anything I've ever seen. The body is kind of like a deer or a goat, except twice as big and with really long legs. But the head is really weird. It kind of just looks like a rotisserie chicken, because we never get a look at it in good light. But it's this fleshy oblong shape that has human hands attached to it. And at the very end of it is this little opening with these two little orange eyes poking through. Mother has such a grotesque character design, and I love it. She chases Luke through the woods and is able to catch him, but instead of just killing him because clearly he's not interested in worshiping her, she makes him kneel. And that's the point where Luke is able to gather the courage he couldn't during that robbery and fight back, face certain death. He strikes Mother right in the face with an axe and is able to escape and leave the forest. And this forest deity, Mother, is I think completely tied to this forest because she doesn't chase him out. In fact, he does that thing where, they, scream in triumph. And Luke makes it to civilization, which I was not expecting. I thought all of them were going to die. The Ritual is a movie where it's going to start out not very good, but then it's going to keep getting better. And while those are certainly frustrating, they're definitely better than the movies that start out promising and then just get worse. The characters aren't great, the story isn't great, but the monster and the horror is incredible. If you want to get scared this Halloween, The Ritual is not a bad choice. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.